What a great day. If you're new to Aspire Church, we're so glad you're here, and you came at an interesting time because it's actually perfect if you're new, because we, for the last few weeks and for the next couple of weeks, we're really explaining a major ministry initiative that we entered into about a year ago called the Bridge Initiative. And so we are coming back about a year later after launching that and recapping it and sort of updating everybody on what's been done and looking forward to what is going to happen in the future. And Go Jax is a big part of what we do every year. In fact, we've been doing that for over 10 years now, serving the city in Jesus' name and working with other churches. It's not about making any one church or any one congregation known, but it's about making Jesus known throughout the city. So thank you for those of you who helped put that together. The Bridge Initiative, if you're just joining us at Aspire Church, is the first part of a 15-year vision. And the reason it's a 15-year vision is because it is a vision that carries us to the church's 100th anniversary in the year 2039. And so we said, what would it be like for us to just set the course for the next 15 years to see what we could do with these 15 years and leading into the second century, God willing, to do all we could to expand gospel influence throughout the city of Jacksonville, so that everybody in Jacksonville knew about God's love expressed for them through Jesus. Then ultimately, through that, to the ends of the earth. That's what we've been doing for the past year, and really longer than that. But this last year, as we've sort of gathered these initiatives together under the title of The Bridge, we've been talking about building different bridges. And the one we looked at last week was building a bridge to the city. A bridge to the city, that the light that shines the farthest shines the brightest at home. And so even an event like Go Jax, carrying the light and love of Jesus in very practical ways into communities where there's food insecurity, or into places where there are children who need to hear the gospel, or lots of different opportunities that we have right here. And we basically said that if we are going to do this project, if we're going to join God in this great mission, that it would require us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Basically, if we're going to build a bridge to the city, we have to understand that love always crosses the street. It requires us to step outside of our comfort zone and to cross the street and to meet a need that God presents right in front of us. But this week, I want to shift the attention away from just what is right here in front of us and to look globally. That if we're going to build a bridge to the nations, we have to recognize that love also crosses borders. Love crosses all kinds of borders. It crosses international borders. It crosses cultural borders. It crosses language borders. I was just blown away this morning as our worship team, because as I'm sitting here, I recognize and know that the heart languages of many of the people on the stage is not English. And yet we're all here worshiping together. And so the opportunity for us to recognize that the message of the gospel, the love of God, has to transcend languages. It has to transcend socioeconomic levels. And so how do we, from right here on this corner in Jacksonville, Florida, how do we build a church that looks like God's kingdom? How do we do that? And ultimately, you might be asking, well, what does that even look like? Where are we going? Where are we going with this whole idea of love crossing borders and a message of the gospel that really is supposed to go all the way around the world? What does this ultimately look like? Well, the good news is the Bible gives us an awesome picture of what heaven looks like. The last book of your Bible is the book of Revelation, and in it, John gets a vision of what heaven looks like. And I want to read to you just a few verses of a picture, a snapshot of heaven, because this is ultimately where this whole thing is going. Look with me at Revelation chapter 7, verse 9 and 10. After this, I, John, looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language. Every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. And they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." So get a picture of this. John is up there. He's in heaven. There's this incredible experience of worship going on. It's too many people to count. It's beyond what you can even begin to imagine. And as he's looking around, he realizes that every single people group on the planet is represented. Every single one. But they're all there, even though their skin color is different, even though their language is different, even though they might come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic places. They're all there and they're doing the same thing. The thing that unifies them is not their language and it's not their nationality, it's not their culture. The thing that unifies them is the person that they're worshiping. They're worshiping the Lamb. They're saying salvation belongs to our God. They've had a similar experience with Jesus in that they have all received and experienced the love of God through Jesus. It has redeemed them, and now they are together, and what used to divide them no longer divides them. It is not the most important thing anymore. The most important thing now is their love and their worship of the Savior who saved them. So that's a picture of where we're going. But we need to back up and we need to say, well, where are we now? Where are we now? Because I don't have to spend much time to convince you that that's not the world we live in today. The world we live in today seems to be increasingly divided and more polarized. We seem to be finding new ways to divide ourselves from each other, don't we? I mean, it's not just the color of somebody's skin or the language somebody speaks or the country somebody is from. We divide over politics. We divide over economics. We divide over everything we can find. And this is really nothing new. That in fact, this has been the condition of the world going all the way back to Genesis. After God created the world in his image and said it was good, it didn't take long for sin to enter the picture. And not only did sin separate people from God, sin separated people from each other. And so early in the story of Genesis, you have this story of all these people who are deciding, you know what? We are going to work our way to heaven. We're smart enough, we're strong enough, we're capable enough. And so they got together and they built a tower that was going to reach to heaven. By their own efforts, they're going to make their way there. Now, some of you are trying to earn your way to heaven now. It's a common condition of the human soul that somehow we think, well, if I'm good enough, if I work hard enough, if I'm smart enough, then I can get there on my own. It's not true. You can't get there on your own. So as these people built this tower, the Tower of Babel, to get to heaven, it says the Bible says that God looked down and he saw it, and he frustrated their plans, and suddenly he dispersed the people across the earth, and they spoke different languages. And ever since then, there has been a dividing line between people, and the world has become more and more fragmented. But this wasn't God's plan. This wasn't God's intention. So God set out on a great restoration mission. He set out to redeem the earth and to reunite people to him and to each other. And the way he did it is he picked one man by the name of Abram. And he said, I'm going to bless you, Abram. But the reason I'm going to bless you is not so that you can be blessed, but it's so that you can be a blessing to others. And he said, I'm going to give you a family, and I'm going to bless your family. But the reason I'm blessing your family isn't just so that your family can be blessed, but it's so that your family will be a blessing. That family is going to turn into a nation, and that nation was the nation of Israel. And I'm going to bless the nation of Israel, and I'm going to make them a light to all the other nations. In other words, I am going to begin reunifying the world through the nation of Israel. I'm going to spread my light from you to the ends of the earth. I am going to bless you in order to be a blessing. Now, the nation of Israel never really lived up to that calling. They never really embraced that call, that mission. And so what you see as you read the Old Testament is the nation of Israel is frequently at war with other people. They don't worship God themselves, let alone do they tell about his glories to the other people of the earth. And so by the time you get to Jesus' day in the New Testament, the nation of Israel has missed its opportunity. It has not embraced fully the call to be a light to the nations. And so as God himself takes on flesh and comes into the nation of Israel as the person of Jesus, he begins to challenge the status quo among the religious leaders. He begins to challenge the status quo among the Israelite people. And he begins to point them back to their initial mission, to say, you were called to be a light to the nations. This is why when John describes the birth of Jesus, he's like, he was a light sent into the darkness, that God himself brought the light to the nation and said, from this point, we're going to share the light and the love of God to all the people of the earth, but they weren't doing it. So near the end of Jesus' ministry, after he's experienced all kinds of criticism, after the religious leaders have tried to arrest him, and eventually they're going to arrest him shortly after this, as he is going back to Jerusalem, where he will be arrested, where he will ultimately be crucified, we have this encounter that is recorded for us in Luke chapter 19. And here's what it says. As Jesus approached Jerusalem, he saw the city. He wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. Now, this word peace is actually the word shalom, and it doesn't just mean the absence of conflict. Shalom means wholeness, completeness, that everything is right. So Israel had been in constant war and battle. And even at Jesus' day, they were occupied by the Romans. And Jesus is looking at Jerusalem and he said, if you had only known, if you had only lived out the mission God had for you, you could have experienced peace. But this whole thing, it's been hidden from your eyes. And then he predicts what's going to happen to the city of Jerusalem. Listen to what he says next. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another. Now, Jesus is predicting the destruction of Jerusalem, and just a couple decades after his resurrection, this exact thing was going to happen when the Romans conquered Jerusalem and totally destroyed it. But listen to what he says next. Why was this going to happen? Because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. Because they failed to recognize the call that had been given to Abraham, the mission that had been given to the nation of Israel, and even when Jesus himself came into the nation to live it out, they rejected it. Because they missed it, God said this destruction was going to come upon you. And listen, Jesus, as he's weeping over the city of Jerusalem, he's not just weeping over the political situation. He's not only weeping about the military situation or the coming destruction of, because the nation has missed its calling. He is weeping over the missional opportunity that has been missed, that God's people had failed to be a light to the nations. Now, if you're looking at a print Bible and even in a digital Bible, you might notice there's probably a heading right after this verse before the next verse, and it's actually a huge distraction. Because what happens next in the story is connected to what Jesus just saw and to his weeping over the city. It's a direct connection to this whole idea of him weeping over Jerusalem. Because the next thing he does after weeping over it is he goes down into the city and he goes into the heart of the city, which is the temple. He goes right to the heart of the problem, which is religion. He goes right to the heart of the issue. Listen to what he says. When Jesus entered the temple courts, he began to drive out those who were selling. They were selling. They were called to be a people who were blessed to be a blessing, to share the light of God with the world. And instead, what were they doing? They were selling things. They turned it into a marketplace. And then he said this, "It is written," he said to them, "My house will be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers." See, the problem was not political. The problem was not economic. The problem was not military. The problem was they had missed the mission. The problem was their heart. Their hearts had turned away from God. And when he says this, as he's driving out the merchants, he says two things that are particularly interesting, that people who knew the Old Testament would have understood that Jesus is making a reference to something bigger here. He says two things about it. The first thing he says is he talks about this being a house of prayer, but after that he says, "You have made it instead a den of robbers." Now, a den of robbers was a statement that had been used in the writings of the prophet Jeremiah 700 years before Jesus was born. So in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 11, God, speaking through the prophet Jeremiah, said this to the same people about the same building, okay? So this problem wasn't new. This problem had been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So 700 years before, God said this to the people of Israel: "Will you steal and murder, commit adultery and perjury, and follow other gods you have not known, and then come and stand before me in this house which bears my name, and say, 'We are safe to do all these detestable things'? Has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching, declares the Lord." Now, in this day and age, when there were bandits and robbers who would frequently go out in the streets and they would attack people and steal them. In fact, the story of the Good Samaritan last week, the man who was left dead, had been attacked by a band of robbers. So after they would perpetrate their crimes, they would often retreat and they would have a den. It would be called literally a den of robbers where they would hide. And they would be their headquarters, their bad guy headquarters, if you will. And they would come out of this place, do their crime, and then go back, and nobody would be able to find them. So what God is saying through the prophet Jeremiah, and what Jesus is repeating 700 years later, is he's saying, you have made you have made this house of worship a den of robbers. In other words, you go out of here and you steal from people. You kill people. You commit adultery. You do all kinds of evil things, and then you come and hide behind religion. You put on your good Sunday face, right? You put on your good game face and you hide behind religion. This is not a story of people who are going out like all of us do and, we sin and we fall short and we come back to God's house and we're repentant and we seek forgiveness. That's not what they were doing. They were going out and sinning. They were living these lives that were so far away from God's call on them, and then they were coming into the temple and acting like everything was just fine. They were keeping up appearances. And this had been going on for decade after decade after decade, century after century, until it gets to Jesus' day, and he says, you have made this place a den of robbers. You are literally in here selling offerings for people to buy so that they can turn around and worship God. You are taking advantage of foreigners who are coming in and they need to change their money so that they can make an offering, and you're charging them to change their money in the temple, the very place that was supposed to be the centerpiece of worship, that was to be a light to the nations, and instead you have made it a den of robbers. But notice the first thing he said it was supposed to be. When he said, this house is to be a house of prayer, he's actually making reference to Isaiah chapter 56. And to finish the phrase, which everybody listening to Jesus would have known the rest of the phrase, it was a house of prayer for all nations. That's what Isaiah said. So in Isaiah chapter 56, God is speaking through the prophet Isaiah, and he's saying, hey, listen, there are all these rules about who can and who can't come into the temple to worship. Nobody who was a foreigner was allowed to come in and worship. Nobody who was deformed or disfigured in any way was allowed to come in and worship. Nobody who hadn't been circumcised was allowed to come in and worship. If you were a woman, you could only go in so far. If you were a Gentile, you could only come to the outer courts. There were all these rules about who could come in to the temple. But then God announces a radical change in Isaiah 56, verse 7. Listen to what he says. These, who are these? These people. These foreigners, these people born in other countries, these people who speak different languages, people who might be disfigured or deformed for some reason, these people I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. For, here it comes, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. For all nations. So when Jesus goes into Jerusalem 700 years later, it's still not a house of prayer for all nations. Instead, it's still a den of robbers where people are just coming in, going through the religious motions, and then going out and living the way they want. The temple was meant to be a bridge to the nations, but Israel had lost the plot. They had been distracted. And you know what? As I think about this, and I think about the religious situation that Jesus faced 2,000 years ago, I'm afraid that the church today may not be so different. And that the church today is in danger of the same thing if it turns inward. If we do not recognize that the call that God gave to Abraham to be a light to the nations, to receive the blessing in order to be a blessing, if we don't realize that the blessing that God poured on the nation of Israel was given so that they would be a blessing to the nations, if we don't realize that that is the same call that we have as the church today, we are likely to fall into the same trap that they fell into if we miss the call that God has on us. How can we recover this global vision that God has for his people? It's always been God's plan that his light would spread to the ends of the earth through the people that he has called to himself. So, that's where we're going. That's what it looks like in heaven. This is where we are. How do we get there? Well, I'm so grateful that Jesus gave us a pretty clear and simple direction. Look what he said. These are the last directions he gave to his disciples before he ascended into heaven. Matthew 28, verse 19, he said, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations." Make disciples of all nations. In Acts chapter 1, verse 8, he said this, "You will be my witnesses, and you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And then you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." Now get this. Notice what he says. He doesn't say, well, maybe if you want to, right? Maybe you guys could think about this. I mean, I've got a great idea for you. Why don't you think about being my witnesses? He did not make this optional. He said, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of it. See, here's the thing. You are being a witness to something. You are. The question is, what are you witnessing to? Are you a witness to the American dream? Are you a witness to consumerism? Are you a witness for the Republican or the Democratic Party? Come on, what are you a witness for? Jesus said, you will be my witnesses. He's inviting his church, just like he invited the nation of Israel, just like he invited Abraham. He's inviting us to be a witness to the light and the hope of the gospel. And notice what he says. It's not just something that happens over there. I love the fact that he says, you will be my witnesses where? In Jerusalem. That's right where they were. It starts right where you are. This is why love needs to cross the street. That a light that shines the farthest must shine the brightest at home. Because you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. See, if we're going to do this, if we're going to be a church that embraces God's mission, we have to understand and we have to accept the idea that love crosses borders. It crosses international borders, it crosses social borders, it crosses cultural borders, racial borders, it crosses political borders, economic borders, it even crosses fences between neighbors. Love has to cross the border. John Stott, the author of The Living Church, said this: we must be global Christians with a global vision because our God is a global God. I love that. We must be global Christians with a global vision because God is a global God. If the gospel is for everyone, so is the church. If the gospel is for everyone, from every tribe, every language, every people, then our church must be a church that is for everyone. This is why we've called you to join us in building a bridge to the nations. And you have done that in some significant ways over the last decade, but especially over the last year or so. It's incredible what God is doing in this congregation. You know, sometimes I feel a little bit like if you're not here as much as I'm here through the week, you don't get to see as much. I feel like I've got a front row seat, and sometimes I want you to just follow me through the week to see all the good things that are happening because of your commitment to the Bridge Initiative. Let me just share a couple things with you. We are involved in English as a second language. Many of you know this is a ministry that has gone on at Aspire since the year 2003. Now, we don't have all the data and the information, but when we talk about being a light to the nations and recognizing that God is bringing the nations to our own community, this has been going on for over 20 years, but we do have data since the year 2013. And since 2013, we have had 575 learners as a part of ESL. Now, this is what's really impressive. Of those 575 learners, they have come from more than 50 different countries. That's amazing, 50 different countries. But even what's more amazing than that is that of those 50 countries, 18 come from what are known as unreached people groups. Now, let me just remind you, this happens right here in our building. Nobody's got a passport. Nobody's even leaving the city of Jacksonville. They're just coming into this building. 18 unreached people groups. And if you don't know what an unreached people group is, let me just explain it to you, because mission organizations globally have identified groups of people in the world who have never heard the gospel. So it could be a tribe somewhere in the Amazon, or it could be an entire people group somewhere in Asia or somewhere in Africa. Even right here in North America, there are unreached people groups. And of those unreached people groups, we have had 18 of them in our English as a second language ministry, where we not only teach them English, we do it using the gospel. That's 18 unreached people groups that you have been able to impact through ESL. But it's not just about ESL, because what came out of ESL was eventually the idea of the Aspire family of churches. You got to experience a little bit of that this morning. That when you're sitting in Aspire Church listening to a sermon in English, what you may not realize is that Aspire Church is involved in 6 different languages every week. There's ministry and the gospel's being communicated in 6 different languages through our family of churches. This past Easter, there were over 1,300 people worshiping through in an Aspire church. And those 1,300 people, there were 6 languages represented. Only half of the people attending worshiped in English. God is doing something incredible in the city of Jacksonville as He is bringing the nations within the shadow of our steeple. And you have responded with practical help like ESL, but also by helping us expand the family of churches so that there is a gospel-centered church in every language spoken in Duval County Public Schools. But it's not just about those who are coming, it's also about how you have gone. So this past year, because of your giving to the Bridge Initiative, we've been able to send 3 short-term mission trips from among the members of Aspire Church. We sent a group to Athens, Greece, which is a major hub for people who are immigrating from North Africa, Middle East, up through Athens and then into Europe. Hundreds and thousands of people are passing through Athens, and we have church members, because of your giving, who live in Athens and minister to these people as they migrate. So we sent a team over to work with them. We sent a team to Guatemala. I think we've got some pictures to show you from these trips. A team from Guatemala that went to work in Guatemala. We sent a team up to Jamaica, Queens. And you're like, wait a minute, Jamaica, Queens, that's in the United States. It is the most internationally diverse neighborhood in all of North America. There are more people groups represented in that one neighborhood than in any other single neighborhood in the United States. And we sent a team to work with the church that you are helping us plant in that community, in that neighborhood. So 3 trips that you helped us go on. If you've ever given $1, you've helped support ESL. You have helped support the family of churches. You have helped send people on these mission trips. And what's really exciting to me about these mission trips this year is not just that we went, but that every trip had a representative from one of the other non-English language congregations. Every trip was an international trip going to serve internationals. And it wasn't just the fact that there were Vietnamese or Mizo going with us on these trips, but it was also the fact that there were multiple generations going, people experiencing mission trips for the first time, and senior adults who were going on mission trips with them. In fact, we made a little video of 2 of our next gen who went on their very first mission trip this year. Watch this.
I was really excited about going because it was like my first mission trip to go experience a different culture and share the Word of God.
To me, it was very fun, and I even made a little friend there. The most impactful thing in Guatemala that I felt like was going to the kids' clubs and helping out the kids and seeing how they were just so happy and were enjoying the time. I feel like it kind of affected my heart, like to have joy, and even though they don't have all this stuff like you do and all this technology, and they're still being joyful and happy and graceful. And so I feel like it kind of taught me how to be more graceful and joyful.
It was a lot of work, but it was definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Getting to go and share the gospel to all the kids and just see how they were happy, it was just amazing.
I would inspire you to definitely go on a mission trip. It's definitely worth it, and you're spreading the gospel, and it's a wonderful time, and you get to make more friends, and you never know what you're gonna see there. It was just full of love and joy and grace, and that it's all because of God that we got to go there.
That's awesome. Isn't that awesome? That's so good. So good. So with the few minutes we have left, let me just try to answer a question for you. And the question, and I hope you're asking it, and I hope the question that you're asking is, what can I do to build a bridge to the nations? And I want you to know every single one of you can be a part of this. You can be a part of what God is doing. And the first and the most important thing, and I know you expect me to say this because you're a pastor and you're supposed to say it, but I've got to tell you, the first and most important thing you can do is pray. Pray. We need you to pray. As the family of churches has expanded over the years, I've got a confession to make. We have not planned any of it. We are not that smart. Every church that has started, every pastor who has been raised up, every time there's been a people group we've been able to connect with, it has not been something we have strategized for. It has been because God has brought the opportunity to us and we responded in faith. That only happens because people are praying. We need you, and I'm begging you to join us in praying. I talked to you about unreached people groups earlier. There are 7,500 unreached people groups in the world today. But I want you to know that in Duval County Public Schools, right here in our own city, schools you drive past, schools you teach in, schools you volunteer in, schools you send your kids to, right here in Duval County Public Schools, there are 50 languages spoken of unreached people groups right here in our city that we can impact with the message of the gospel and raise up young people who will come to know the love of Jesus and then may be called by God to go back to their country of origin and their people group and share the message there. We have an opportunity to make a tremendous impact. In your worship guide today, there is a prayer card, and that prayer card has the languages, those 50 languages that are spoken by 50 unreached people groups in the world today. And there's a little prayer on the back that you can just use as an example of how you might pray for them. If you were to pray for one language a day from now to the end of the year, you would almost make it through this list twice. So I would encourage you, would you just join us and begin to pray for each of these languages and the people they represent and ask God, if it's your will, would you allow a leader to be raised up? Would you allow us to find a way to connect with that people so that they might have the gospel in their own language right here in our city? We also want to encourage you to join us for a special time of worship. Once a year, we get the Aspire family of churches together. It is a beautiful experience. We call it the International Thanksgiving Service, and we worship together. You got a little taste of it today, but it's exponentially more than that. So we'd love for you to be a part, and I want to show you a little video, because in this video, this is a time of prayer that we had from last year's International Thanksgiving Service. I want you to just get a little taste of what that service is like. Watch this.
Perdona nuestras deudas, así como nosotros perdonamos a nuestros deudores. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
You know, as we recited the Lord's Prayer all in our own language, I can't help but think about the line, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the one line in that prayer where we pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." We just read what it's like in heaven. And we have an opportunity to help usher that reality into earth. So would you join us November 9th, come at 5 o'clock, be a part. There's a great international Thanksgiving feast after, so there's good food. You don't want to miss it. Mark it on your calendar, be a part. So you can pray. The second thing you can do is you can give. Just since last December when we launched the Bridge Initiative, you have already given over $200,000 to missions. That is unbelievable. Yeah, if you can't clap for that, you're not going to clap for anything else. Amazing, amazing. So we would encourage you to be a part of the Bridge Initiative. We've given you this week, again, a commitment card inside your worship guide. On this commitment card, if you filled this out last year, you made a 2-year commitment to us. You don't need to do anything unless you just want to update it. But for those who weren't here, or maybe you didn't turn one of these in, this really helps us. And let me tell you why. It's not because we're going to take this and hunt you down. It's not a legal contract, nothing like that. But if we're going to plant new churches and hire new international pastors, if we're going to go on mission trips and make commitments of financial support to ministries, we don't want to overcommit ourselves. So your turning this in helps us do a better job of planning. So we would be happy to talk to you about this. You can fill this out. You can turn it in this week or any week this month. But we would love for you to be a part of the Bridge Initiative next year. It makes a tremendous difference in what we're doing. One of the things that we're going to do with the money that you've given, we've already completed phase 1 of this project, but we are literally doing a reconstruction project of this building to make our building a house of prayer for all nations. That's what we want to do with the campus. You know, so many times when a church starts, they spend so much money on building a building or buying property and doing all that. And the truth of the matter is, God has blessed us with a tremendous campus right here in the heart of the city where multiple congregations from multiple nations can use the same building, but we need to go in and retrofit it to make it a place where we can have multiple congregations meeting at the same time. And so we've got some pictures in the hall. You've probably seen some of the images of what we're going to do. Phase 2, we're looking to get started. Your gifts help to make that happen. Already what you've done in their giving through phase 1, we were able to restore the third floor worship area where just last week or 2 weeks ago, I was with our Vietnamese congregation celebrating their 3rd anniversary. This is a picture. So while we're meeting down here, they're meeting upstairs. So it's, again, helping our building be a building that is a house of prayer for all nations. It was a tremendous time celebrating their 3rd anniversary. So we want you to be a part of that. We want a healthy church in every language spoken in Duval County Public Schools by the year 2039. We want to plant two more language congregations by the end of 2026. We've got a Spanish speaking translation going on in this service. We're hoping to bring on a Spanish pastor. We're hoping to even launch more than 2 churches. Your giving helps us to make that happen. Already in 2025, this year, you've given a tremendous amount. We set a goal in 2025 of $3.1 million. We still need about 1.5 by the end of the year to close that gap. So we're asking you, support the church financially, because when you support us financially, it is not just about what we're doing here in our own building for our own people. It really is about building a church that is for all people. And finally, you could pray, you can give, and finally, we're asking you to serve. Go on a short-term mission trip in 2026. We've already got a trip planned to Ethiopia where we have partners serving in Ethiopia, and we'd love for you to come. There's a table set out. You can get more information on that. You can, on this same card, on the back of this card, there's a place for you to put, I'm interested in going on a short-term mission trip, and you can mark down Ethiopia or just mark down on a short-term mission trip. Turn that in to us. It's on the other side of the financial commitment. We'd love for you to be a part of that. We've also always taking volunteers for ESL, and you think, well, I don't know how to teach ESL. Here are the requirements. Ready? You need to be able to speak English, and you need to be nice. That's it. If you can speak English and you can be nice, you think, well, I don't speak very good. It's okay. We don't even care if you speak good English. You just need to speak English. And be kind and nice. Come and help us at the ESL. You can mark that on the card as well. Volunteer for ESL. You can also volunteer to help us in Aspire Family of Churches. The Corinne congregation, which currently meets in Arlington, is actually going to move back on our campus in January. They're going to be meeting on Sunday afternoons. And let me tell you why this happened, because it's a good thing. So last year, we were sharing with you that we wanted to invest $1 million in their church building in Arlington to expand it. We realized that it still wouldn't be big enough. So we have just invited them to come back to this campus to meet in the evenings, on Sunday evenings. But here's the problem. The Corinne have been here so long now. They've got children and middle schoolers and high schoolers whose heart language is now English. They don't have enough teachers to teach the Bible to those kids in English. So they're asking, and I'm asking you, would we be able to provide some volunteers to come on Sunday evenings to be Sunday school teachers for Corinne high school students, middle school students, elementary students, to rock babies in the nursery on Sunday afternoons to help the Corinne congregation as we continue to reach the nations. Again, you can use this commitment card on the back, and you can just say, I want more information about that, and we will follow up with you to give you more information about that. I was talking this past week with Pastor Thulemu, who pastors the Corinne congregation. Many of you know, if you've been around Aspire, they were the first congregation that we brought into the family of churches. And Thu and I were just recounting the great history that our congregations have together and the way God has used both of these churches to support and help one another over the years. And he was telling me, he was recounting some names of some people who 15, 20 years ago were helping the Corinne right here in our community. Names like Faye Lockamy, who helped start our ESL ministry, or Karen Bell, who started an after-school homework assistance program for the Corinne back 15, 16, 17 years ago. People like Laura Miller and Eleanor King, Brenda Forlines. These are people who would go to the Corinne apartment complexes where they were. They would take them to the DMV. They would take them to doctor's appointment. They would help them with their taxes and the IRS. And many times when the Corinne couldn't pay a bill, these people would write the check out of their own account to help them. And as Stu is recounting these names of people, he said something to me that I thought was so profound. He said, there are Corinne people today who are on the bridge that was built over a decade ago by people that they don't even know. He said, we are crossing a bridge they built. We are crossing a bridge they built. I thought, man, that's a picture of heaven. That's a picture of what it looks like to go from where we are to where God's ultimately calling us. I'm going to ask our musicians to come back up on stage, and as they do, I just want to ask you for just a minute to imagine something with me. Imagine that you are in that scene in Revelation. Imagine that you're among that great multitude that nobody can count, with people from every tribe, every tongue, every language, all gathered around worshiping God together. There is perfect peace. Everything is as it should be. And you are doing this, and as you are there, somebody from another people group, another language comes up, somebody whose skin color is different. They come up to you and they say, I'm here because you prayed. I'm here because you prayed for my people. They come up and they say, I'm here because you gave, and the money you gave went to help support a missionary. I'm here because you served at ESL or you rocked a baby. You might respond, no, you've got the wrong person. I've never been to your country. I've never left the United States. I don't even have a passport. And the response back would be, but when you prayed for that unreached people group, when you volunteered at ESL, when you gave that offering for missions, when you volunteered to care for a child from another country, God heard your prayer. He used your offering. He raised up that child that you rocked in the nursery at Aspire Church, and that child became a missionary who came back to his country of origin, who came back to her people group, and that person shared the gospel. And I'm here today because you built a bridge to the nations, and you didn't even have a passport. I'm telling you, that's what's happening. And God's inviting us to be a part, just like He invited Abraham. And He blessed him to be a blessing to the nations, just like He blessed the nation of Israel to be a blessing to the nations. So He is blessing our church. Church, we cannot miss the opportunity to share the light and the love of the gospel across the street and around the world.